Hello and welcome to The Surprise Truth. This is a show where you get aha moments that can surprise you, because a surprise truth is a timely insight that can change your life forever. It'll change the outcomes of everything you do once you know what it is. So today I'm glad to have here Martyn Terpilowski, who is the key person behind a very interesting business being run in Indonesia, which is all about location intelligence. We'll get to know a little bit more about that, but welcome, Martyn.
Thank you, Sachin. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And I think one of the things that strikes out is that you are one of the few investors in Indonesia who have come from overseas and have built a business which is solely dependent on Indonesian talent. So yeah. I commend you for that.
Thank you. Yeah. It's not been easy, but yeah, we're getting there. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to get straight into the matter, the surprise truths behind operating in Indonesia. So what are the surprise truths about Indonesia that probably made you think, hey, you know what, I want to be in that market?
Well, I think, for my business, it was kind of made sense. I mean, Indonesia's demographics, everything that everybody talks about, the fact that there is such a increasing middle class. I don't think it's a surprise truth. I think everybody knows this. Yeah. But these were the reasons I came to the market. Maybe the surprise truths are more that, it's not quite as simple as you think it's going to be. You can't just look at the population and say, right, there's 275 million people. This is my potential market size. This is what I'm going to do, and raise the money off the back of that. A lot of people have done it that way. I think I would say that it's nearly impossible to do it that way. I think even though there's opportunities huge here, there is a lot of things you've got to really understand, and you've got to look at the local market, and you've got to act in accordance with the market. And there's things that, I'd lived in Hong Kong and Tokyo for many years, and there's many things that are very different here than are in other markets. But as you said many times, the opportunity is huge. It's all about harnessing that opportunity and basically taking advantage. Because for my specific business, I think it was more a case of looking at, we're doing, as you say, location analytics software.
Yeah.
And we just looked at I talked to some very influential people here, and you look at Indonesia, it's got lots of data, but it's totally disorganized. It's not in one place. There is too many different parties involved with every process.
So that's the opportunity you saw, that there's a lack of service.
So I think, and also it's
underserved.
It's logistically challenged, is Indonesia. Yeah. There's so many islands, so many towns, right? So I was thinking, if I can put all this data in one location and link it to software that allows companies and governments to make better decisions, to me it's a no-brainer that's going to work. Now, what I probably didn't realize is, but a lot of the outdated business processes remain popular because of people's fear for jobs, etc. So I think that was something I honestly thought that, I had the key to the castle when I came in here. I look at America, 75 companies doing what I do. I thought, well, I'm going to be the only guy in the market. This isn't the kind of business that VCs are going to flirt. So I've got a real good chance, and I have. But it's been a lot harder than I thought, because there is a lot of dependence still on outdated business processes, and maybe unless you're the owner of a company, you're not really interested in how much money I can save you or add to your revenue. So there's things there which in a B2B and a B2G environment are challenges, but I think with any market where there's such huge opportunity, you're always going to face challenges.
Yeah. So you're kind of like a pioneer in this industry and this sector here.
Yeah. There's other guys playing at it, but they don't have you need quite a lot of resources, and it's not VC backed. So there's a couple of great guys who I know doing like smaller businesses, 8 to 10 people, which are doing consulting, etc. But to actually build the product from scratch and collect all the data, it's going to cost millions of dollars. So we are, with 150 staff, we are by far the biggest in the sector.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to your business in a bit. But the startup world is something I'm going to talk about next. But the surprise truth in this first question to you was that, yes, you're right. A lot of people come here and they pack their bags after a year and go back, because the surprise truth here is that there's a way of doing business in Indonesia which sometimes you may not realize how it is. It looks very different from the outside, but when you're actually operating here, you find that you need to be behaving in a different way and acting in a different way and responding in a different way in order to build a business. So as many as you may have seen successful companies here, they're probably 5 times those who have packed their bags and left, parachuted in and out, as you could say.
Of course.
So I think the key main thing is here, you got to establish here. You can't just come in and go. You got to be here. You got to do what it takes.
Yeah.
You got to build a local team, and you got to invest in this market.
Yeah, you've got to be all in. I mean, I was at first living in Singapore, and then I thought I was going to live in Bali, and I realized very quickly that's not an option.
Okay.
I had to. If you're going to do something like I've done, you've got to be all in. Number one, I put up the capital myself. For the first 2 years, I was the only investor. So you've got to be fully committed. You know, as you say, this idea that you can just launch a business and then, I know some people have done it, locals with help. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But the reality is, particularly as a foreigner, you cannot come into this country, launch a product, be a multimillionaire in 3 years and walk away again, or your business will take you time to be established. You've got to be out there. You've got to be learning from the clients.
Yes.
We just launched our third product, our third version, and that's all from feedback from clients, the government, people who use our software. What's good, what's bad, what don't you like, what do you like? So yeah, parachuting in and trying to. I get frustrated with people who try to make a quick buck, as you know, right?
Yes,
because I know how hard it has been to build a real business from scratch.
Correct.
So I think these get-rich-quick schemes that I've seen, long term, if that's what you want, you might get out of it, but when it comes to building a generational company, which will be here well after I've gone, I think you've really got to focus, put the time in, and put the effort in.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the startup world, because Martyn's also been in the startup world in this market here, and I think the last few years have been very eventful, especially with COVID and a post-COVID world. And what are some of the surprise truths that you feel you've learned by being in the startup ecosystem of Indonesia?
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm not sure I'm fully in the ecosystem because we're on a B2B and B2G business, right? A lot of the B2C I see, from my perspective, they are losing a lot of money because they are basically looking at the population size, and that equates to valuation, which has been the case for a few years.
Yes.
I think, and I've been saying for 5 years, at some point, you're passing the bag, and at some point it's going to go wrong. And we've seen some unsuccessful IPOs. We've seen losses for funds investing in these areas. And I think it's going to be a resetting, a rebasing, where people need to get back to basics. This idea, and as I said the same again, I mean, it's happened. People have become super rich from a business that's never made a dollar, and no one's questioned that. We have seen a huge amount of, just keep raising money, and then the founders take the money out and become wealthy. I guess the reason there's fewer people doing B2B and B2G is because that's not possible.
That's true.
I can't blow up the valuation off the back of the potential market size. And, I haven't dealt with VCs, for example, because I never understood that model. I never saw, if you're not holding it at the end, that's fine. Yeah. But if you're holding it at the end, and now you're seeing that some of these guys who can't get further investment, these guys who were at stage E, whatever, after 10 years, and they're either being forced into an IPO, which really is impossible, so they've had to SPAC, or they're sitting on huge losses, or they're sat around desperate for money, taking 70, 80, 90% haircuts because they've got to a stage where they're holding the baby, and all the water's gone. So I think there's going to be a reset. People are, for me, there's too much noise around it. There's all these media coming out. All they talk about is funding. Yeah. Business isn't about funding. Business is about business
and revenue.
And of course, funding is nice. And of course, we know Amazon had funding. We know Google had funding, but it was in a different age. They had a certain amount of funding to build their business, and there still was a time scale.
Correct.
I find now there's just too many VCs and too many startups, because people see this untold wealth. People say, all right, I can start a company, 3 years later, I can be a multimillionaire, whatever the company does. And this has created a whole generation of people in the startup ecosystem. And I'm not having to go to Indonesia because I have no experience outside Indonesia in the startup ecosystem. But you've got a whole generation of people who see this as the job to do, startup or VC, because I can get rich quick. It's much easier than working at Goldman Sachs or McKinsey. I can basically get life-changing money even if my company's not making money. And I think that everyone started thinking like that, right? So I think there's going to be a real reset where
it's already happening.
Yeah, it's happening. I mean, and again, people should stop just talking about the funding. people should start talking about what solutions are you making? Because what are you providing? What is needed to this guy? Now I know it's difficult, especially if you're doing something that no one else is doing, because you've got to break down this outdated business processes. But if you're doing the same as 10 other companies and none of them are making money, why do you think you're doing it? And I see this all the time. It just doesn't make sense. And being big's great, but if you're big and you can't support yourselves, it's no good. I mean, we've seen companies like, one of your competitors recently was doing pretty well, but then they just started getting greedy. Yeah. And suddenly they're raising money all of a sudden, having had a successful business, and now they've raised so much money that it's very hard to keep up.
That's right.
I always say, if somebody came to me tomorrow and give me $50 million, I wouldn't know what to do with it. It won't totally destabilize. You destabilize that business. It won't totally destabilize that business. It's not what I couldn't take it in. It won't be even moving to the countries.
Well, how to deploy it.
Wouldn't know how to deploy it. And this is the issue which has driven the whole market, where salaries have got to a stage where are totally unsustainable. And now you've got a huge number of people out to work, at salary levels that are just not sustainable. Because I always say to everyone in Indonesia, you are in Indonesia. You're not in Singapore, you're not in Tokyo, and you're not in Hong Kong. And therefore, despite the fact you might want a great salary, you've got to be able to pass that cost onto the customer.
Okay.
And that's not always easy. So if you're going to build a product in Indonesia, or whatever you build in Indonesia, and you want to pass that on to the client, you pass the product cost on to the client, you're not going to be able to. So effectively, you can't be hiring people on Goldman Sachs, Singapore salaries to work here. Really, however good they are. Because it will not work from a financial perspective. And we've seen a lot of these unicorns have 200-300 people, all the VPs on money that is investment banking salaries. But the major difference is, if you work in the banks, you are thrown out if you're not making money from. If you're on the front office, you're a sales guy, they review you every 3 months. Yes. So the idea that these guys are equally, if you're not making money, actual profit.
There's parroting.
I used to be in the sales, financial sales business. You get paid well, but you've got to back it up. So we've got a whole generation of people getting paid so well.
And not having to back it.
And not going to back it up. It's not necessarily their fault. They are employees in a big company. But it's very, very hard for that company ever to make money when they've got that kind of balance. But that's all created by having too much money.
That's true.
Having too much money. A lot of these companies that are still losing money could have been profitable by now. Easily. They have a huge market share. There is no excuses for not being profitable, in my opinion. It's because the constant requirement to get higher valuation and get more money in or out. I don't know which. Some people take it out, I guess. And I think it's creating a huge issue in the ecosystem. So I think that there's a lot of resetting needed. And I think there's some new players needed as well. I think Indonesia still is, I keep seeing the same people launching businesses and bankrupting businesses. That's not very inclusive. People say about all this is,
there's a social impact.
There's social impact. Why are we not seeing more
players jobs and then what?
Why not see more players? More players are here, right?
So I think that's a good surprise truth to a lot of people who may be looking at the startup world from the outside and not understanding how it actually works. But I'd like to get a little bit more into the location intelligence part of the business, because honestly, geo-fencing, locational intelligence, all of these are the technologies that are being used today to drive your business to be more, you could say, effective use of your deployment of your resources, and also more specific targeting and finding your customers.
Yeah.
So many other such background information is there about this industry, and I'd like to have a few insights from you. What do you think is the key surprise truth behind the whole business of location intelligence?
I mean, for me, it's basic common sense, that effectively any company, we always talk about location. For developers, for example.
That's right.
If you buy an apartment, location. Accessibility, what business is close to you, it's no different for companies. So large corporations in Indonesia, clients of ours, for example, they want to know where their customers are. They want to target their customers. So basically what we do, we link all kinds of, we aggregate huge amounts of data, and we put that data into software which visualizes that data, and then we have analytics that give predictions based on that data. So it may, in a very simple way, You might look at your 10 best stores in Jakarta and you don't know why they're doing well. Our software will analyze those stores. It will explain to the client why those stores are successful, or why they're not doing well, and effectively we can then use those positive and negative things. So it could be the population is women between 15 and 25, social economic status, medium high, near a school, near a hospital. So we can analyze what works for you and what doesn't. But we can also go a lot deeper than that. We don't just work with it. We also work with these companies for doing sales projections. So we say that 70% of all your problems can be solved by using our software. But there also is issues with things like human resources.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen the thing Undercover Boss, he often turns up and finds that the people working for him don't care, right? So what our software can sometimes analyze that, right, we're looking at overall Indonesia. So we're linked to the POS of some of our clients, and we're looking at, right, based on our findings in your other stores, these stores should be successful, but they're not. Why is it? Is that human resource issue? Is there something that we could do better? Are we selling the wrong products in that store? So all these things can be dealt with through using the data. So when I'm talking data, I'm talking all the data from governments. I'm talking data from BPN, but I talk live telco data. So basically you can see the people traffic. With all this craziness that people still go to Bali and Manado to count people, that's ridiculous. There's live telco data available. Look, but again, that's jobs for people, and that's where we are. It's same as One Map Indonesia. They've been building this for years. We built it already, but people don't want to know that because there's lots of jobs being involved with that, right? So this is the issue. The quickest way is not always the way that people want to use. But for our software, there is lots of, it's a surprise to many people. But Boston Consulting believe that using location analytics software gives between 20 and 50% increase on various metrics. So this could be revenue, this could be customer satisfaction. So there's data there to back this up. This could be anything, taxis as well. You'll sometimes see taxis, there'll be loads of taxis parked empty, and there'll be loads of taxis, there'll be loads of people queuing where there's no taxis. This can be dealt with through demand planning. We can look at the telco data to see what kind of time of the day that people are here. Are these people the kind of people that are likely to use your taxi, or will they have a driver? All this data is there. So the only reason everyone in Indonesia is not using our software, to be honest,
because they don't know about it.
I think most do know about it now. I think there is concerns over job, in my opinion. If I get to talk to the owner of a company, it becomes a lot easier. But there is an issue where people see, at the moment we have a massive IT team, for example, that gets budget from the company. Yeah. And these guys built this and it works already. We're putting it into companies. At the moment, we're doing a roadshow around the country with the biggest motorbike sales company in the country with 167 dealerships. And we are basically going around the country showing in their 12 head offices. Yesterday, my team were in Pontiac.
Yes,
Pontiac. And I think they're in Samaranda today. They're traveling now, doing the roadshow, the 12. So all the people are coming to do this. And we're basically showing their team how to use our software. But it can be done one day in each result, in each area. So effectively, our software is going to be put in very quickly. Okay. Right? So, of course, there is fear that's going to put an end to certain projects. It's going to make the business so much more efficient. Well, the efficiency is obviously very easy when you can collect all your data. Your POS data can be linked to the software. We can link your data. We can link to CCTV cameras. And basically, you can manage all your data to make better decisions. So, not only the data we have, which is aggregating data from multiple sources, but obviously companies have data themselves. We can actually make a lot of companies have data, don't know how to use it.
They don't know what.
Or it's not effectively used. But by linking, especially if you're a retail outlet, by linking big data to geographical position, it can make decisions far easier. And we also work with like FMCG for delivery. We have an app, a targeting app, so that all the drivers or salespeople can collect data on there and fill it to the system. So it's an end-to-end. It's industry agnostic, but it's an end-to-end solution. And I think it's a no-brainer, to be honest. Yeah. And when we get to see the right people, it usually ends up being a no-brainer. Yeah. But there is a lot of pushback from people, oh, we can do this ourselves. Good. It costs over $10 million, so good luck. And if you can't spend this, you won't spend that. But yeah, that's it. We get a lot of feedback. We'll do this ourselves. And yet to see anyone do it. But it is the feedback.
So the use cases you said in retail, that makes sense, absolutely. Yeah. Because if you're looking at even setting up a new store, this is something you would do. Like you would look at several options and pick the best one based on data analytics. What are the other use cases? Can governments use it? Let's say we go into the regions and we go into these, like you're going into some of the other cities. What are the use cases that may be relevant as a starting point?
Well, there's quite a lot. We're working with several government agencies, but again, the pushback is quite big. I mean, I was speaking last year at the BPM conference in the Discovery Katiko Hotel in Bali, Kuta. Yeah, and there is pushback. There's lots of things we can do with the government. They have a lot of data that needs visualizing better. I mean, we also got a tender in with the police, for example, to manage the data from the CCTV cameras with another third party. So there is anything which is managing data which is linked to a map is basically where we can come in. So we have worked with BSSN for them tracking things on using our software to track they have their own data, but they can use our software to manage the data and make predictions based on that data. But something like VPN, it can be just simple, doing the loud titles and more digitalized, but also monetize the data. A lot of these guys have so much data. Telco companies, a lot of data. How do they visualize it better? Because again, for years and years, they've just done project by project, but a roadmap. How can you actually make your data? And how can you sell your data? Because you can add out your data to our platform. We can actually help you sell it to other clients.
That's true.
If it's anonymized data, always not private data. So, let's have a look at some of these cases. So, retail, obviously, as you said, the biggest cinema group, the biggest coffee shop.
Better than our footfalls, basically.
Yeah, where the footfall, but also with the FMCG for all the routing, the accessibility, where to put the hubs. And then we get into the real complicated stuff with the big, we're doing some finance. We've got a module for finance, so helping with the credit scoring. We have some partnerships with companies, again, based on the data. We deal with a couple of the big financing companies which are linked to large conglomerates, for example, where we actually help them manage all their marketing campaigns, for example. So out of office advertising is another one, where to put your adverts. If you've got limited ways you're going to get the most people to see your adverts.
How about banking?
Banking, so we're working on this more and more, but yeah, of course, where to open those branches is the obvious one. Yeah. Some of these guys now have traveling branches. And because again, there is still an issue with a lot of these financial inclusion, because the older people still want to see the physical bank. So closing all your banks,
not necessarily a good idea.
Not yet at the moment.
Not yet, right? Even in England, people protest about it.
Yeah.
People really get fed up that they can't get to the bank anymore. The older generation, right?
That's true.
So there's all that, but there's also the huge amount of data they can manage themselves. They can look at what products they're selling, what store, what kind of clients to target. This can be for mortgages, this can be for private bank, this can be for anything. So it's all linked to, you can see people's spending power.
Sure.
A lot of the banks have their own credit card data. All that data they have, but it's not properly. If they have that using our software to visualize it, they can much clearly see. They can also build their own products. So we're helping some companies build white labeling now.
Okay.
Because they cannot sell the data, basically. So some banks, for example, but they have a lot of data, like data which is anonymized, but their data, right? But if they can look at their data better, they are able to advise customers better, so they can have their own location services that we build effectively. Sure. So for the big card providers, for example, who, a lot of these companies now are moving into solutions themselves.
And realize that the cost of building what we build is quite high. So, but they can really visualize all their client data to themselves, and then they can actually sell that product to clients, for example, to say to people, we know what the spending in this area is socially going status this. Of course, you can't get the direct data because, we're tracking all our machines now, and we've got software managing it. So anything that has, so it's not just the data we have. The clients also, a lot of them have very valuable data that they're not
put it all together.
Bring it all together, layer on layer, and we fully modularized our system now, so you only have to pay for what you want. So before it was hard when we started, everybody got something different. If we really struggled to get the SAS, software as a service, because that's the golden ticket when you do that.
Absolutely. It's scalable.
Yeah, it's highly scalable, but the issue we've had is that when we start, everybody wants different things. We follow the wrong people. It's taken us a couple of years to get
And that's right.
to get it right. Well, perfect, yeah, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Any use cases for farmers?
Not at the moment, but we could. I mean, again, this is something that there is. If you look at global, if you look at global
commodity prices, for example,
if you look,
or,
I think it's more
prices.
a case of track, like mining as well. Our software will allow them to manage the data on the mines. So if everybody has a watch on the mines, so they can see manpower, where the manpower is.
Yeah.
If there's any issues like in relation to in mining, they have issues with when, again, disorganized, that the barges may come at the wrong time to collect the coal, and a hole in the road will slow them down, lose so many hours because something gets stuck. And all these things can be managed by proper data analysis, right? Same as in agriculture. We can do exactly the same. It's just, we've got ourselves a lot of cases yet, but if you look at the big global companies doing what we do, they are managing all the data of all this, any data you can map. So if that data is not available, but the client has that data, of course, in the mapping case, usually they map it themselves with drones. But of course, that, I mean, it's a different thing than outside that. But we can certainly do a dashboard. Yeah. We can, like public transport. In all these public transport, we can tell them where to put their stations, where to, so people who are going to use it get on at that place. Routing, we can recommend the routing based on the data, so you can make sure that you get more people using public transport. I know the government have a target.
Yeah.
Taxis, we can make sure they get more people per day, increase their revenue, I believe, by 10 to 20% by basic. So anything really where it links big data and geographical position. With the mine and the agri, it's a bit different because it's on their own land, right? So it's not, right. It's mined it's mapped in a different way. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the big global players, they're in everything. Yeah. They've got the fingers in all that kind of stuff. It's just that we know that in Indonesia, there's such a huge growth in FMCG, in retail, in banking, all this kind of stuff is, even these fintech companies, we're talking to a few of the big ones now, particularly credit score companies, about doing joint venture and things like this. So yeah, I mean, all the data we have is useful for decision making. It depends what level of decision it is. I mean, usually all the demographic data or the telco data is more used for anyone who's attacking retail clients. Sure. Usually, right? Yeah. But the engine is effectively can be used for anything because it's a map and an engine to manage data.
Yeah. So the surprise truth here that comes out actually is that locational intelligence is very outcome based. The output of this business is actually to increase productivity, save money, and optimize your business assets, and also help you to improve your business footprint in the market, including being able to expand and scale up. So coming back to the expanding and scaling up part, Martyn, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what's the opportunity here for something like what you're doing here within ASEAN. There's a reason I ask about ASEAN, because ASEAN is the new bloc in town, where it's been compared to many other blocks like the EU and everything else. However, ASEAN has a unique opportunity because it is one of the fastest growing blocks in the world, and the growth opportunity with 700 million people in ASEAN, we're looking at building a $3.3 trillion GDP, which is there right now, looking at a $10 trillion GDP in the next, let's say, 10 years. The opportunity is humongous. And why is this coming up is because of the diversity of ASEAN. It's not a one-shoe-fit-all solution. Every country has got its own problems and its own opportunities. And that opens up, the potential for companies that are well established within the region to be able to take their knowledge and their experience and expertise and help the ASEAN bloc as a whole. Because if Indonesia is part of the ASEAN and being the biggest country in the bloc and the only member of G20, there's an obvious opportunity for businesses in Indonesia to be leading the way towards how the whole ASEAN region can grow and develop. So any views on that, and maybe some things that you may have discovered?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to Vietnam on Saturday. So it's something it's clearly in my views. We discussed this a few weeks ago when you visited my office. I think the opportunity in other countries in Southeast Asia is huge, similar to Indonesia. I think what we do, again, is still very early stage here. So if you look across if you look at the growth of location analytics software, even in globally, it's increasing around about 16.6% a year, and expected to carry on above that level to 2030. In Southeast Asia, it's growing even faster. Sorry, in Asia, it's growing even faster. But if you look at who the players are in Asia, it's still the old boys. Again, it's the Australias, it's the I wouldn't call it Asia, but it's South Korea, Japan, China, India. They're far more into it. If you look at location intelligence, Indonesia is not even on there. Vietnam is not even on there. Philippines, Thailand, not even on there. So this just shows the potential of those markets. Now, there's a reason every single company in Japan uses this kind of software, because they know it helps them, right? So again, I expect the challenges in Vietnam will be very similar to the challenges in Indonesia, as in there is a fear of the jobs this may impact. And this for me is like, it will always be a challenge, but I think long term, as we discussed before, that when I was first job I ever had, we had a typist, and I think this came from you. And now no one's ever heard of a typist for 20 years, but we don't have mass unemployment. And I think really it needs to be grasped that now is the time for upskilling. We've heard this several times, but people cannot long term continue to do jobs that are absolutely unnecessary. And whether it's me who stops it eventually or somebody else, it will happen. So, I think I'm going to have the similar challenges when I go to Vietnam, and there's reasons that there's nobody doing it, right? But again, that's where the opportunity comes. I probably will go into Japan at some point, purely because I was living there for 12 years. My partners are Japanese, and I have very strong connections there. But it's going to be a lot harder. It'll be easier in one respect, that everyone will understand, and everyone will want to use things. It'll be on a price or on a quality of the software, right? But when I go to any of the Southeast Asian countries, the problem is going to be more explaining why you need this. I believe it will be much easier, because now I can look to Indonesia and say, right, the biggest conglomerate's my client, the government's my client, this guy's my client, it works, let me show you. It's a lot easier than now. When I turned up, and I remember talking to a few of the oligarchs in the, I can call them oligarchs, but the very wealthy families, and I was talking to them in the mercantile club, the old in WTC1. And they're just looking at me like I was crazy. This 80-year-old guy who formed one of the biggest companies in the country. And he said to me, he goes, yeah, but why are you complicating stuff? We've never needed this before. And I said, but boss, you could add 10% of your revenue like that. And he goes, yeah, really? And that's the challenge, right? They've got such a big share of the market, some of these guys. They don't see the opportunity to look at something different, right? So, but as markets become more competitive, they're going to have to. So I would imagine the challenges will be very, very similar in Vietnam, but I think the opportunity will also be great. And as I've always said to people, that I want to be the first Indonesian deep tech company to sell their product overseas. And
you are all Indonesia team, right?
We have 148 Indonesian people and 2 Bule. So, and I'm not really part of the team. I'm the investor and the commercial guy. My CEO is from Singapore, via London, via Myanmar. But yeah, we have a local team. So again, this is sometimes a frustration to me that yes, I'm not a foreigner. Sorry, I'm not a local, but I've created a lot of jobs here, and we actually build stuff here. So we're not one of these companies like a lot of the startup companies that have their tax office in Singapore or anything like that. We do everything here, right? So we do feel that we need some loving, basically, from some help as well. So, we should be, I believe, held up as an example of success. Just to give you a clue.
An all-Indonesian company expanding into the region. That's a good story.
But Indonesia needs to look at this, because I tried to make some appointments in Vietnam, and the investment minister is going to meet me and ask me if I need picking up at the airport. Now that's quite different to the situation here, where I'm here and they know I'm here, but nobody really makes an effort because I'm a foreigner, I guess. There's much bigger stories about companies burning money than there are than me. So again, if you're looking for big foreign investment from the big players, you should be showing examples of success. Yes, as I was once told by somebody, we could dig that money out of the ground in an afternoon. But at the same time, you're telling people you want people to come here.
Yeah.
Now, Vietnam is actively trying to become a high-tech economy.
Yeah.
It probably, I'm not sure on the numbers, doesn't have the same natural resources to here.
Yeah.
They are removing, to a great extent, vested interests to allow it to be more commercial.
Yeah.
And the big boys, the big tech guys who've been doing the road show will open there because of 100% FDI.
Yeah.
So they are, and these are these people, they will come to me, and they'll help you. They'll even give you office space there if you invest a certain amount of money. They want people to come there. They are using the Singapore model.
Yeah.
Not the you're lucky to be here model. Come to our country, you play by the game. I get that. You're in anyone's country, you play by the rules.
That's
I get
true.
it.
That's true.
And I've had no problem with that. But it should be celebrated that Indonesia people have built products that are possible. Even the biggest tech company in the country has no IP. I was with one of the senior guys the other week, the biggest technology company in the country. They are now trying to cannibalize other companies because they don't want to waste time doing it themselves. Yeah. And what they found is there's no one to buy because in Indonesia no one builds real deep tech except apps.
A handful of them. Yeah.
Apps, right?
Yeah.
But I said to him, well, do you not think that's a bit weird? You expect other people to build it when you're probably the biggest man in that whole sector.
Yeah.
But you can't, your company's 50 years old, 49 years old, but you can't be bothered. Or not can't be bothered, but you're looking to cheat kind of thing, Yeah. You're looking to buy somebody who's done it, and then you're complaining there's no one to buy, and the people who there is to buy, like us, is not for sale.
Yeah.
Why would you expect these young kids to be able to build when they've got no money, and they're not getting support from venture capital because you can't exit a deep tech company in 3 years?
Yes.
So these guys, that's one of the problems. There isn't even the top people don't want to do it. They want to buy somebody else, but then the funding's not there.
Yeah.
Because it takes time.
Yeah.
The last 5 years, I retired at 38 thinking my life was going to be easy. The last 5 years of my life have been the hardest ever. So but I think Vietnam is it's welcoming us. It wants us there. I'm talking to potentially somebody in the Philippines. I think the whole of Southeast Asia has a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think, but it's also, there's going to be a competition there. And Indonesia in that case has to step up for the competition.
Correct.
Because they cannot be coming out with all these rules and expecting to get the global tech companies to listen, because the reality is simple. Those tech giants are bigger than countries.
Yeah.
And they will go where is more suitable for them from a workforce perspective, from a tax perspective, from a talent, and from the rules. I mean, they're not going to jump through hoops to open a factory. Simple as that. When there's other people, I mean, you just imagine if a foreign investment minister is going to meet me in Vietnam, what did they roll out for these guys, right?
True.
And all got to be considered. But ASEAN as a whole, massive opportunity. I think.
Which are the 3 countries you could name apart from Vietnam where you would be interested in going?
I think you got to look on population for what we do to an extent, right?
Exactly.
So Japan, it's not in ASEAN because of connections, but there's 2 things I always have to look at is connections, and I don't have any connections in Thailand, for example, so it's not on my radar at the moment, but it might be.
Yeah.
The places
Thailand, Malaysia.
The other places
Philippines.
other places I would probably go would be Malaysia and Philippines.
Yeah.
But it's purely, that's based on connection as well. I through my old job, I used to know a few people who said they'll help me out. I think Thailand's probably a good opportunity.
True.
I don't know enough about you need to know about the laws and everything in these countries, right?
True.
But I do think if you can do Indonesia, you can do it anywhere.
Sure.
And I do think there's going to be a lot more. Singapore opens the door for everyone, right? And they've been very good at it. But the cost of doing business in Singapore now
It's high.
is very high. I was with a guy last week.
And the market is so small.
Well, yeah, and in the past, people used to do stuff there and then sell it overseas. Well, as I've already said, you can't pass on the cost to the clients in a lot of these locations. So that's not going to be a choice anymore.
True.
I was with the guy last week, I was in Singapore last week, who built the, what's it called, the virtual twin of Changi. He built it, he's ex-NVIDIA guy, telling me he sold his shares in 2018 and he's very depressed about it. But he basically said that he can't build the product in Singapore anymore to sell into other countries because the cost of building the product and
much higher.
Your office costs, all your costs are high. So there's I love Singapore, but the opportunity for countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, because Thailand, because I've seen that I think Johnson & Johnson have recently moved to Thailand from their head office, Asian office, out of Singapore. The cost is becoming, even though they have all the incentives and everything, the cost is becoming hard. So again, that provides a lot of opportunity for other countries, but they've got to jump on board with it. They can't expect everyone to jump through hoops when, at the end of the day, it's been much more expensive in Singapore for a long time, but people have chosen to do business there because it's easier.
Correct.
You know, so there needs to be thought process from all these governments of how do we become competitive in ASEAN? Because we want to work together, but we also need to compete, and the people who don't compete will be the losers here.
That's true.
You know, that's the right.
Okay, so now we are into the last segment of the show. Some surprise truths about you, Martyn, yourself, your journey, and what made you what you are. Are there any interesting, funny
surprise
stories?
Truth. I'm from the United Kingdom. I moved to Tokyo when I was 23 to work in finance. So I've been in Asia for nearly 25 years. I ended up here by default. I was always a sales guy in finance. Then I worked for a family office and a hedge fund.
That's a finance
background
guy in a sales world.
Tech world. For years. I mean, again, I hire professionals. I'm not one of these founders who thinks they know everything, because I don't. I mean, I find it quite frustrating that here people often want me to attend meetings when I don't have the ability, so why am I joining the meeting? I am purely on the financial side. I spent 16 years in Tokyo and Hong Kong, mainly covering Japanese clients, strong connections there. My partners in this business are Japanese. Our thought process, I'm not surprised this has taken me 5 years to get this far. People might think it's slow compared to the fantasy world people have been living in, but this is how the real world works. I've worked on IPOs before. I've worked in the real world where you can't just give yourself $1 billion valuation overnight. So the whole world is, startup world and the world I come from is very different, right? So it has been a real divide to cross to understand. And when I've had meetings with some of these guys, I've really not understood the younger guys in the VC world. Blows my mind. But so my background totally in finance. I was in about 6 years ago, I ended up meeting a guy here and he talked me into investing here basically. He said, come to Indonesia, we'll give you help. And that's how I started. And then I looked at opportunities within the market. And I honed in on this one, talked to an ex-minister, and they were telling me what opportunities there would be in Indonesia for the next few years. So basically I just looked at who's doing this in the US, who's doing this in Europe. To my surprise, if you'd asked me 6 years ago, this is the surprise truth. If you'd asked me 6 years ago, I wouldn't have known what geospatial software was.
True.
Now I own probably the biggest company in Southeast Asia doing this, right? So it was out of the blue, and a lot of the people I work with closely before think it's quite funny that I'm in tech, because I was the most untech person ever, complaining all the time about problems with my computer, problems with Bloomberg terminals. You know, I was always not that person, you know. So I think it surprised a lot of people, but it's totally different than what I did before. You know, I don't get paid anywhere near as much. I spend a lot more, but it's much more rewarding. I mean, I didn't build anything before. I mean, basically, I just moved money around and got paid a clip. That's all I did for a long time.
Do you ever think you would be an entrepreneur? At what age do you consider wanting to be an entrepreneur?
I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, really. I basically left I had 38 and I needed some time out. My brother was very sick and unfortunately he passed away, and I just decided I needed that time out. And I was a responsible officer for a large family office hedge fund in Hong Kong, about $2.5 billion. And my boss didn't really like it, but I just decided I'd had enough. So a responsible officer means you are legally responsible, so I have to go and take my registration out, so they have to find somebody else, because it's a regulated market.
True.
You need 10 years experience to even get the RO job, and you've got to pass all these exams, etc. So you don't meet many successful guys who are under 40, really, you know, to be honest. And as I said, I just ended up coming up here from Bali to meet some people. And then that was it. I decided I'll have a go. So it was kind of off cuff, but I kind of backed myself, because I started in Tokyo with a blank piece of paper, and ended up being reasonably successful, managing to own a property portfolio before I was 35. So you back yourself if you've got a track record of doing it. You know it's not going to be easy. You get loads of pushbacks. I just go again. You know, I've had so many pushbacks here, so many things. I've looked at the wall and thought, why am I doing this? But if it's in your mentality, just keep going. You know, there's no other option.
That's a part of the journey of being an entrepreneur.
I'm so invested in with me as well. I'm so invested, personally invested, millions of dollars. The other money comes from my friends. So this is not an option anymore. You know, I cannot just walk away like I did before from finance. So it's a totally different thing. And I guess it's about the money, of course. I want to make money and be successful. But it's also, you know, building a legacy, building something that no one has done. So that's my strategy.
Well, I wish you all the best, and thank you for joining the Surprise Truth. We had Martyn Terpilowski here from BVT, talking about location intelligence, and he talked about a lot of other things. And if you really go back into this episode, you'll find a lot of surprise truths that might help you in your own journey as you go across building your own business or working in companies which are building businesses. So look forward to catching up with you all at the next episode of the Surprise Truth. But meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also give us some comments, which will help us get a conversation going. Thank you very much, and see you later.
Thank you.